Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're taking some truly fascinating concepts and breaking them down into clear, structured insights that you can actually use in your everyday life. I am absolutely thrilled to share this one with you. We're going to be exploring a profoundly transformative idea I recently uncovered from the first section of a text known as the Fruits Treatise. We'll be looking at the core concept of treating our daily time not just as hours ticking away on a clock, but as a vital, strictly budgeted resource. A resource that requires highly intentional management to avoid a complete systemic crash. It's this brilliant crossover between modern systems thinking and deep spiritual philosophy, and I literally cannot wait to unpack the whole shebang for you.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really grasp the philosophy we're unpacking today, we first need to look at a scenario that anyone who uses a computer or, works in tech is going to immediately recognize. Just picture a high-performance computer server. Every single day, it has a set processing capacity, right? Now imagine you allocate 100% of that processing power solely to handling front-end user requests. Sure, you're maximizing your immediate output, but you leave absolutely zero processing power for background maintenance, system updates, and basic security protocols.
So, what's the actual result of that kind of extreme resource allocation? Well, in the short term, everything seems perfectly fine. The server just hums along, the users are happy, and you might even think you've gamed the system. But if you skip those background processes for long enough, things start to quietly deteriorate. It usually goes totally unnoticed at first. But inevitably, the system starts to lag, unhandled errors begin to silently pile up in the background, and eventually, over time, you're looking at a catastrophic major system crash. The server simply cannot sustain itself without that essential underlying maintenance. Section 1. The 24-hour life, capital, and system maintenance. Let's take that exact technological framework and transition from the realm of computer science right into 20th century philosophy. This brings us to a foundational calculation introduced by Sayyid Nursi, who is famously known as the renewer of this century. He introduces a concept that I honestly found just as relevant today as any modern productivity hack out there. It's the idea of life capital. Nursi asks us to think of our daily time as a strict economic budget. Every single day, you and I are handed a life capital of exactly 24 hours. No more, no less. And this capital, according to Nursi, must be divided carefully to cover two distinct lives: the worldly life we're living right now and the life of the hereafter. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is when we look closely at Nursi's exact math and how we actually spend this capital, the numbers are kind of jarring. We routinely spend 23 of those hours entirely on this world, on our jobs, sleeping, entertainment, all our daily routines. We allocate almost the entirety of our daily processing power to the immediate, front-end user requests of our everyday lives. Just look at that glaring visual contrast on this chart. We've got 23 hours completely dominating the circle, representing our worldly life. And then there's just one tiny sliver remaining. Nursi points out that giving literally zero time to the hereafter, when only a single hour is required to complete the 5 daily prayers, is just a staggering imbalance. In fact, he argues that when you look at this math, neglecting to allocate that one remaining hour is an error against reason itself. It just defies basic logic. Just one. That's the remarkably small ask we're talking about here. When we look at this from a systems perspective, this single hour of prayer is our essential background maintenance. It's an incredibly small resource allocation, right? Yet it's the absolute precise protocol required to protect the spiritual and psychological health of our entire human system.
Section 2. The costs of neglect. What actually happens when we refuse to spend that 1 hour? What's the real price we pay for skipping our maintenance? Let's take a closer, maybe more empathetic look at the cost of this neglect. And this brilliantly illustrates the core argument of the source material. By mapping the tech metaphor directly onto our inner lives, the parallel becomes absolutely undeniable. On the left, our server skips its background maintenance and crashes. On the right, our inner world skips its 1 hour of spiritual maintenance, the daily prayers, and the result is exactly the same, a total human system crash. Without that 1 hour of connection and atonement, our internal framework just loses its stability.
We see this playing out constantly, especially if you look at the modern youth experience today. Think about how our daily life capital gets completely fragmented. The day gets scattered across endless scrolling on social media. We've all been there, right? Hours get lost to gaming. Massive amounts of focus are completely consumed by studying and career building. All of these are front-end requests pulling heavily at our processing power.
And in the middle of all this frantic activity, that vital 1-hour maintenance process usually just gets completely skipped over.
And the source material is super clear about the tangible cost of this neglect. It isn't just a missed checklist item. It results in a deep, heart and spirit level distress. It's literally an active corrosion of a person's inner world. Just like those unhandled server errors silently piling up in the background, this spiritual distress compounds over time. It slowly degrades our well-being and our inner peace until the system simply cannot cope anymore.
Section 3. Decision Theory and Rational Faith.
Let's pick the energy back up and flip the script for a second. If skipping this hour is irrational, how can we mathematically prove that observing it is the most rational thing we can do? Well, let's step into the realm of decision theory to find out. In decision theory, there's this really fascinating concept called expected value. This happens when a very small, seemingly insignificant action becomes extremely valuable from a purely rational standpoint because it's tied to a massive, highly likely outcome. It's the ultimate high-leverage move. It is so deeply satisfying to see how this cool mathematical logic maps perfectly onto spiritual practice.
So the crucial point is how Said Nursi's calculation perfectly aligns with this expected value logic. Look at the steps here. Step 1, you take a very small action. You allocate just 1 single hour out of 24 to prayer. Step 2, that action is tied to a large outcome. The text notes that, especially during hard periods, allocating this time actually allows that fleeting hour to count as lasting, permanent time. Step 3, it becomes a highly rational choice. You achieve atonement and you ensure your systemic health. By investing just 1/24 of your daily capital, you yield a return that secures the entire system.
It makes complete rational sense, doesn't it? A tiny resource allocation that protects the whole shebang. But, this calculation opens the door to another truly fascinating thought experiment about risk, reward, and the ultimate stakes of our daily budget. If we're dealing with expected value, what happens when we view this 24-hour life capital through the lens of a high-stakes lottery? What does that mathematical breakdown actually look like? Well, that is exactly the provocative scenario we'll be unpacking in our next explainer. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.